Okay, this is Sports for Real with Coach Hall, and I'm doing something a little bit different today. I've been reporting on a shooting that took place in my hometown where three people were shot. Two died, and one is critically injured. And after watching the college football playoffs, we found that the game between Georgia and Notre Dame was going to be postponed because of the tragedy that took place on New Year's Eve. Um, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little sports, ride a little bit, point out some landmarks, and talk about how sports can affect the town and how it can affect the way things occur in the future. If you look at the thumbnail, this building right here is on the highway, and it is the building that you see on the thumbnail as I pointed down toward the action. Now, just to recap what took place, across the street here is where you had the gathering where everybody, standing around having a good time and, just enjoying the evening on Christmas night. Then the shooting took place across the street over there. That brown building there is the Palatka Daily News, and that building is riddled with bullet holes, and that's where the victims were shot. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to ride, and I'm going to talk a little sports, and then we're going to go from there. All right, I don't know what they're doing. So now what they're doing here, they're doing some work on the streets. So I'm going to try to go around that and try to recap. Now, as far as I go, everything began with me with sports. And that all boils back down to high school football. As a kid, we used to go to the games and we had to walk. And not the street here, but the street over. I can't get that way because of construction. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this turn right here on Oak Street and then make another right and head on up in the same direction as we took when we were going to the games as a kid. And it was an exciting time because when I was 19 years old, my high school was one of the best schools athletically in the whole state of Florida. That includes Miami, that includes Jacksonville, right here in this little tiny small town. They had good track teams. They won a couple state championships. They also won football championships, and they had an opportunity to win a couple others, several more over the years, but they've only been able to break through once. What we used to do, we used to walk up this hill here, and like I say, from my house to the stadium is only a mile. The biggest obstacle is crossing the highway back there. That wasn't really no big deal because you didn't have a whole lot of traffic, not the traffic volume that you have now. So as we roll up the street here, um, it was nighttime, 8 o'clock is when they play high school games then. Now they play, man, what the hell is that? Is that a dog? I don't know what that is. Ain't going over there, I know that. So as we got right about here is when the excitement started to pick up. Because you know, you're going to see some good football. We have some good teams here in town. And like I say, the biggest obstacle was getting past the highway there. Now, I mentioned that the town had a couple of state championships, a couple of runner-ups. They have a lot of individual state champions. But a lot of that is accredited to this house right here. Right now you can see it, but as years ago you couldn't really see it because there was those columns there were covered completely over and you couldn't really see. But what made this house here significant is they had dogs here. And when the kids would walk by going to the games, the dogs would chase the kids up and down the hill. And that is attributed to the fact that a lot of speed was gathered in training by accident in this spot. Now I'm also just noticing, I hadn't noticed this before, but it used to be a water tower right here on this spot, and they got a marker there. But there's also a house there now, and I wonder what happened to the water tower. I never noticed that. Well, I know it now. Again, and I want to talk a little history of the town as we go through. And this is Coach Hall rolling through hometown here in Palatka, Florida. And like I say, we had a lot of good athletes come through here. We still have a lot of athletes. But the question is, can you get them to participate? That's the big problem now. Back then, you didn't have that problem because you didn't really have any other avenues around here but to participate in sports. So as we start to get closer up here, you can see how it opens up into a school zone here. Now, this school right here that we're coming up on used to be what they call Palatka South. They had two high schools here. They had a Palatka Central and they had a Palatka South. And that is the remnants of segregation. This school right here, um, it hadn't changed a whole lot. If you look at it, it looks like one of those old style high schools from the 60s. If you go into some of the bathrooms, it starts to look that way. You had the gym there, and then you have your football practice fields and other PE fields over here. And it still hasn't changed a whole lot. If you guys know about the professional football, Jarvis Williams, that's where they had his funeral over there. Um, as far as sports go, we used to play City League basketball games in this place right here. Once this place here converted over to a middle school. They converted it to a middle school, and now it's a sixth grade center. And that's where the issues begin as far as I'm concerned. But once you got to the game here, they've added these fences along the line here, but a lot of times you can come here, you can catch the visiting team sitting right here waiting on somebody to open up the locker room. Um, I remember '82 playoff game, Tallahassee Leon came here, and they had the white helmets on, red pants, and I can still see that today just as clearly as I did back then. But they would sit right there, and they would wait for the coach to open up. Now the gates and the press box and everything has changed here, but this is the football field where a lot of big games took place. A lot of players that you've known over the years have come through here. Tim Tebow is probably the last better known player to come through here. Um, what's his name from Miami? Portis from Gainesville. He came through here. Um, Several other players over the years. A lot of state champions have come through here on their way to a championship. So it's a pretty interesting place to play. But when we used to come to games, um, you had to park over here in the school parking lot. They didn't have all these fences, as I said before, but right here they designated this area here for visiting teams. So they will always have somewhere to park the bus. Like I say, this place here is just a sixth grade center now. It's not really being used for anything other than that. But if you see right here, they didn't have these gates here, and where everything is paved over now, that used to be brick road. It used to be brick roads, just like the road I'm traveling on now. Everything around here used to be brick, but instead of redoing it all, they would just pave it over and don't even worry about digging it up. Now you got two fields here, softball fields or whatever you want to call it, but there used to be another field down there. This is where we used to have our baseball practices at. And on that road over there, I got a nasty scar that I got 40 years ago riding my little brother's bike. And I still got it today. And it looks just as bad as it looked then. Let me see if I can show you what it looked like. Yeah. Yeah. That scar right there been had for 40 years now. Riding the bicycle and fell. I had more tumbles on the bicycle than I ever did on a motorcycle. And it's probably a good thing because if I had that many on the motorcycle, I probably wouldn't be here today. But yeah, this is where we used to have our baseball practices. And then round up here, the high schools used to have the softball team used to play here. And it's kind of odd, when they first opened the school, they actually had a softball field, but they didn't use it for very long. So they just came out here to play the game. And this is what they call Forrester Field. But now it's called Sweet and Cheryl Owens Field. And those are the people that ran the recreation department when I was a kid. But we used to come here and play baseball games in Little League, jamborees they call it. But this is primarily a softball field. Lately, they haven't been using these fields very much because of the travel ball situation. Everybody can't afford to play travel ball, so the sports have declined, which is leading to where kids don't have as much to do. Now, right now, I'm pulling up on what's called the Azalea Bowl, and it is said that Babe Ruth actually played back here in the 1920s. I can't verify that, but they've had pretty good success in baseball over the years here. And I can see now they're upgrading the place by adding a brick wall, kind of make it like what you see when you go to professional or minor league parks. That's what it looks like here. But it's a good place to play. Got a lot of history here. They won state championships here. And like I say, they had a lot of great players. Several guys come out here and go to the pros. Um, but I don't know. Well, I guess I do know, but I won't say all that. Um, but anyway, but where I'm going now is what they call the State Park Ravine Gardens. Ravine Gardens is where we used to go to do some serious track training. And because the school was an old high school and you could walk across the street to the football field, when they built a new high school, they decided to just keep the old stadium because there was no real reason to build another one. Plus, it wasn't that far away to get to the stadium. But like I say, it's been a lot of big games over the years, and all this used to be covered, and you couldn't see. You can stand right here and watch a game now, but you couldn't do that as a kid. But here's the state park where it's a 1.8 mile loop once you get down in the hole, and from gate to the loop is 1/10 of a mile. So the entire loop around the building, around the surface, is 2 miles, and it's up and down. There's some serious hills in there, and it's a place to go if you want to get yourself into some track shape or any other kind of shape, because they got exercise areas, they have trails, and on the back end you have a golf course. It's supposed to be private, but nobody's going to stop you from going in there and run. So it is an excellent place to get in shape, and these ravines help develop a lot of state champions around here. All right, but while I'm working my way back to other landmarks here, let's talk about what happened last night between Arizona State and Texas. I completely fault the Arizona State players for blowing that game, because if they had made the right calls at the right time, then that is a game that they should have been able to win. Here he was trying to force situations, or to act like his team couldn't get into situations, and it cost his team the game. He had a couple of chances to kick some field goals, and he instead went for it and got stuffed. Texas was very stout up front, and it was a very foolish idea to keep trying to jam it up in there to get those first downs. And in the end, because you failed to convert, those are points you could have had that would have prevented you from going to overtime. Even as it was, the game only went to overtime because they made a bad decision on coverage when it was 4th down and 8. Texas had to convert the first down or that game was over. So what ended up happening was they blitzed instead of dropping 8 or 9 and making Ewers stand back there and find somebody in that sea of people. But he didn't do that. And they end up scoring on that 4th down. They got the ball and they scored on the very next play to go up. And then Arizona State, there's nothing they could have done about it because they didn't score a touchdown. They put themselves in a bad situation by overthinking. So the players, they had the heart to win the game, but the coaches didn't have the foresight to realize that they were going to come out rusty, just like all the other teams. They were going to come out rusty, and that rustiness ended up costing them the game. All right, so where I'm coming up now is now called Mosley Elementary. It's been Mosley pretty much for a while now, but I'm going to show you where the track used to be. Up until the late 90s, when they put a track in behind the school, the track meets used to all be held out this way. That is the track where a lot of state champions ran. This is a Rolling Reader track. Now they have turned it into a bus loop. And I guess you have to make way for progress, but at the same time, this was a good facility and it could have still been in use. Uh, just so happened though, I know where the marks are, and as the asphalt fades a little bit, I can pretty much tell where the marks are. You know, like that pole right there, that's the finish line. I used to have one there, wooden pole there. On the other side, they had the brake line. They never pulled all that stuff up. So everything is still in decent shape to hold the meat. It's just that you don't have the lines anymore. And on that wall over there, where that, I guess that's a slide or whatever it is, I have no idea what that's for. But like I say, they turned this thing into a bus loop, and they got the little covers there for the kids to get off the bus. And it's completely different setup from what it was when I was here. Um, again, everything is all set up to hold a track meet. It's just you don't have the lines anymore. It's a yards track, real soft surface, and used to have a lot of district and regional meets here. And like I said, a lot of good talent that came through here. Now, when they moved to school, well, let me explain to you. Like I said, they had the segregation schools. You had two of them. You had Palatka South and Palatka Central, with South being the predominant white school and Central was the black. And what they did, they drew the districts up where the best ball players would end up at South as opposed to Central. So when they opened up the new school in the fall of '77, that changed things as far as the location for the kids getting around. And when you had to go to track practice from the school now, you had to get creative and cut through the cemetery. All these houses and stuff here, they weren't here at that time. There's like habitat houses. They put those in about 15, 20 years ago. And it's completely different. And they put this arc in here, and that is the path from where we used to cut across and go through this field right here, jump the gate, which is the same gate, by the way. Still got the same locks on it because they're rusty. And we used to jump the fence. But we used to come through the cemetery right here. And when we came through the cemetery, it made it an easier cut as opposed to walking all the way around the long way. Now, granted, we got out of school at 2:45, and at 3:15 practice started. So you didn't have time to dilly-dally around. You had to get there. So again, we didn't have to go the long way. So we just cut through the cemetery here and cut across up here at the light and went the back way, which made it a lot easier. We can get here in probably about 15 minutes if you hustle. In hindsight, the smart thing to do was to get yourself in better shape by just simply jogging to practice. Because if you didn't jog to practice, then it's going to be a slower trip. And then by the time you got there, you won't have much time to rest. So as we crossed, again, they didn't have all these other things here. That car lot was there. This shopping center was here. But everything else, a lot of this stuff is new. Family Dollar came and they went. I don't know why they closed that store, but call it progress. All right, just a little history lesson here. You see this Taco Bell? This was actually the Burger King. You know those original Burger King stores from the '70s? That's what that was. That was the first Burger King store here in town. When they opened a new building across the street, like in '88, then they turned this into a couple other things and it's morphed into Taco Bell. It wasn't that way originally. But that building there is the third version of Burger King because about 4 or 5 years ago, they remodeled it into the new design. But this Burger King, when it was here, it was interesting to all of us players because when we used to play football freshman in JV. Yeah, we had a ninth grade team at that time. And what we would do to pass the time, because you couldn't hang around the school, coaches didn't want to be tied up with you 24/7. So you just had to be back at a certain time. What we would do, we'd go in there, eat, and pass the time. And then after a certain amount of time, it was like clockwork. Everybody ran out of there in a rush. Why were we rushing? We were rushing because you had to get to the bathroom. And a lot of bathrooms there. And the race was really about choice. You want to get to the best spots because the best spots also were the ones that were closer in proximity. Now I'll get to back to the high school in a second here, but where I'm going here is just down memory lane a little bit. Um, and what I have here is the location of the elementary school. It's called Mellon Elementary, and this is a place where I have a lot of firsts. Now, I hadn't been down this road in years. Normally, when I come this way, I make this right-hand turn. But if you came down here, then you come up on the back of the school. Very little has changed about this building. It hadn't changed much about it at all, if anything. And well, I see now. I guess look like they got a bus. The bus loop is back here now, but that wasn't the way. The playing fields that was over there, but they don't have the monkey bars and other little kid things that we had. So in that regard, I see they added a wing over here, and because they added a wing, it protrudes closer out into the woods. But this field here is where I got my first athletic failure. Third grade, we had this competition. We played kickball and other kind of events, that elementary kids do. And I got the idea that I'm going to outrun everybody because one of the events was to run down and touch the fencing back. Now that overhang there, that wasn't there. But the field generally looks the same other than the part where they added the bus loop. I hadn't been down this way here in 30 years at least. But during the race, I decided that I'm going to outrun everybody. So not realizing the mechanics of running and what can happen if you take off too fast, I didn't think about none of that. I took off and I went for it. I ran down and I touched that gate first. And all I had to do was get back to the finish line. But man, by the time I got about halfway back to the concrete, I just couldn't. There was no way that I can finish that race. And I locked up. And man, that hurt me for a long time. I actually cried bloody tears about that because that was a race I knew I was going to win. But it didn't work out for me. And it's a hard thing to swallow when you know you can compete and you know you faster than everybody else, but then you don't win the race. Yeah, everything pretty much looks the same except, that little enclosure there, it wasn't there. And we're going to touch this fence here and run back to the concrete. All in all, we're looking at probably about maybe 150 yards, maybe 200. But I locked up and I couldn't finish the race, and that's still heartbreaking today. The other heartbreaking thing about this thing here, I had a classmate in the third or fourth grade. I think his name was William Forsythe, and coming from one of the football games, because it was a big thing back then, got hit by a car, got messed up real bad. Never heard of him, never heard anything else about him. He never came back to school anymore. Maybe he moved away. I don't know what happened to him, but yeah, on this road right here is when he got hit. They used to have some panther paws on this road that pointed to the direction of the school. And it's right directly across the street from where the new high school was built. Now, I said new, it was 1977 when this school opened. So they're pushing 50 years now. But, it's a modern building when they built it, though. And it's still in pretty good shape. But what they're going to do, they have decided to remodel it. I don't know when that's going to take place. But right here is the area where we used to have what they call a milk run. And they mowed that up to make a parking lot. But the milk run, you start up here, you run all the way around by the football field, all the way across down and down in this little jug that came out around the edge of the tennis courts. But all this was all soft sand kind of area, and it's got a completely different look now. But now you have the track here, and the track is it's been here since like '98, and they've resurfaced it a few times. This is a meters track, whereas the other track is a yards track. And see, they got bleachers out here now. That's a first. I think they do that for the little Pop Warner football games. Um, this is a field that they could use for games, but they still use the regular field for that. There's no more freshman games, so there's no real reason to have an extra field. But that scoreboard and everything works. They can run a game here if they wanted to, but they choose not to. Maybe for a special occasion or two, but for the most part, they're not going to have a game here. But this Black High School opened in the fall of 1977. So as you can see, it's not very far from the Burger King. So when we ran out of there on game day trying to get to the bathroom, it wasn't very far, and nobody had any accidents. So that was a good thing. But we still laugh about it when we get together to this day. Um, but yeah, I had a lot of firsts at this elementary school. Um, they've added to it a little bit. It still looks the same. They hadn't changed a whole lot. Changed the bus loop. I don't know what they're using it for, but we used to get off the bus right in front of the main office here. And main office is down there. This is a new building here that hadn't been there 20 years. So a lot of changes, but at the same time, you can still see the marks of where they used to be. But when I was going to kindergarten in the first grade, in the fall of 76 and 77, no, fall of 76, that year, we saw this school here being built. They would bring the cranes in, and you could see all the construction taking place. And coming to school and leaving every day, you can see the construction of the school as it took place. And it was right here at this school right here, Millen Elementary. As you can see, I'm steady talking about little landmarks here, but at the same time, sports. That's the fabric of what I'm talking about here. Everything existed around here based on the success of the local athletes, and we had good track programs. We had individual champions. We had wrestling state champions. Right now, they got about 15, at least 10 state championships in weightlifting. They got numerous weightlifting champions here. Matter of fact, the first guy to win 4 individual weightlifting titles was from right here. And that feat was accomplished maybe 10 years ago, and it was done by a guy on the other end of the county. So if nothing else, at this place here, we're going to be able to run, and they're going to be strong. And they play some good football. But lately, they haven't played that great of football because a lot of parents, they don't have any confidence in sending their kids here. Not necessarily because they can't get coached up. It's because of the administration. The bigger issue is how are you treating everybody outside of sports? And the parents don't feel that they've been treated fairly. Now, this road here used to be 2-lane when I started elementary school. They've expanded a little bit. We're looking at this center over here was where they put the Walmart in. That was groundbreaking in the mid 80s. And since then, they have put a new Walmart out on the highway out there. So everything is modernized. This TD Bank here, that was built as a Ponderosa steakhouse. That was my senior year in high school. And yeah, we hit that up. But they didn't stay very long. And it's kind of disappointing because they actually had some pretty good food. All right. So what I'm doing now, we headed back toward the black side of town. All this stuff over here on this side of 17, not 17, but 100. That is the primarily white side of town. Not so much now, everything's all mixed up pretty much now, but back then it was not. But back then, in the 70s, on the other side of this church here, you'll start to see Home Depot, and you got all these different restaurants right here. But back then it was an open field, and in that open field they had like this white sandy hills, and the guys with the big trucks, they call it mud bog in the day, but this is where they went to go and burn off some steam and jump over some hills and all of that. That's what they did back then, because that was the only real place that you can go. You didn't have to go out in the woods like they do now. They got a place called what they call that place? Man, I can't think of the name. Something about a holler. Uh, Hog water is what they call it. They go out there and they spend the money and they go tear up the woods. But all this stuff here is all new stuff here. You got restaurants here, salsas, all this stuff here was all barren. There was nothing here. So, all right. So, still talking sports. I'm disappointed in Arizona State coaching staff because I just know that they had the opportunity to beat Texas. I actually picked Arizona State to win. But the real problem, though, to try to give the Arizona State coaches a break, just too much of a break. That bye actually hurts you in college football more so than it helps you. And all four teams that had to bye, they all struggled. Well, all three of the four teams, because Georgia hadn't played yet, they all struggled. And they struggled because they couldn't get off, they couldn't keep their rhythm from where they were at the end of the season. And that was more obvious with Oregon because Oregon was hitting on all cylinders. They started the game yesterday the same way that they started the season. They were struggling. And then Ohio State looked at what Oregon killed them with the first time, and they came up with a game plan to prevent that. And it worked. Oregon didn't seem to adjust to Ohio State's offense, and it ended up costing them. Now, what you have here is where you have soccer fields now over here to the right, and this is over in the recreation department area, and you have all these softball complexes. So that field Forester, they don't use that anymore. They put all the games out here in a centralized location. I'm not even sure how big the softball is now. Softball used to be really big around here. I don't think it's as popular anymore because the core players who were carrying that on, they all gotten older and wanted to do other things. So I got to research that and see what's going on with the softball around here. But this is where they all play now. I hit the recreation complex. And yeah, one quick story. That water over there, I was out here walking one day, and there's a fence over the water. And as I got close, I saw a long tail with a hook on it. I'm thinking I'm watching TV because I watch all those wildlife shows. And it was about a 12-foot alligator just sunning. He didn't see me, but I hurried up and turned around. And now that I think about it, I'm not sure if it was an alligator. It might have been a crocodile because I don't think alligators have that little hook in their tail the way that this one did. But if they do, then maybe I'm wrong. But I've never seen an alligator with that hook tail. All right. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to go up here. I'm not going to carry this on too much longer because I'm not going to cut this. I'm just going to play it raw. And as I get around this corner here, we're on the other side of the highway, as I say. This is the more black side of town. And of course, the black side of town always suffer the brunt of any major changes. Um, I told you that they had two high schools. I showed you Palatka South. That became a middle school. And now it's sixth grade center, if I'm not mistaken. And it's still in use. But it's an old building that could stand to be replaced or upgraded. But the other side of that is you had two middle schools in town. They took Central High School and converted that into Jenkins Middle School. And that stayed that way up until maybe 10 years ago. Then they tried to make some changes where they were going to make um, Jenkins a 7th and 8th grade center, while the former South became a 6th grade center. Well, they've scrapped all of that now. And what you have taking place now is all of the 7th and 8th graders now go to the high school. And I got a major problem with that. And it's problematic to me because this town is big enough that you don't have to have a situation where you got little kids going to high school with seniors. Um, they closed Jenkins altogether about 2 years ago because they say it's too costly to maintain because it's an old building. Yes, it's old, but so is Old South is old. So if you close one, why not close the other? So what they're going to do, they're going to build some new schools around here. They're going to build new buildings in Crescent City and Interlochen, and they're going to remodel the high school. But Jenkins is going to be pretty much turned over to whatever it becomes. Now, if I had me some resources and finances, I would turn this into a multi-use community center. It would be a school. It would be, I'm not going to say all I would do with it, but I'm telling you what I would do. I would make some changes with it. And because of that, um, because of this school being closed, it's a big loss to the community. But at the same time, this is new. There was never a stop sign here before. A lot of old timers are going to get tripped up by that. They're going to speed right through here not knowing it's there, just like I almost did. So it's a bad situation, but that's the old black high school. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back at another time and do a part two to this video. I tried to shoot all of this live, but I wasn't able to do it simply because I don't have a signal. And I don't know why I don't have a signal, because it's a nice, pretty day, and it kind of disappoints me. But I'm going to come back later and try to do it again. So in the meantime, this has been Sports for Real with Coach Hall as I roll into the old neighborhood. And I'll see you guys on the other side at some point. Until then, Sports for Real, I'm out.